Here. Councilmember Stacklett?
Here.
Councilmember Stearns?
Oh, yeah.
Mayor Collins?
Here. This evening we have a special presentation by the Siskiyou Economic Development Council. It's a quarterly update. Please come on up. Hi.
I am the program director for Discover Siskiyou, which is the tourism promotion program that operates under SEDC. And I will try and keep my report brief because my two colleagues will be presenting as well. But I just wanted to give you a quick update on our tourism marketing efforts. So I thought I would start with a brief update on occupancy. Our team keeps in regular contact with lodging property owners and managers, and we've heard reports from Mount Shasta lodging properties, several of them, that 2021 was their best year on record due to, I think, large numbers of urban residents coming north, coming into Siskiyou for pandemic travel, experiencing the outdoors, some of them for the first time. So the pandemic was somewhat helpful for occupancy in Siskiyou County, and while it would be awesome if we could continue that trajectory, we were anticipating a slowdown, and we saw that a bit this summer. We're still well above pre-pandemic occupancy, but we are slightly lower from that peak we hit in 2021. I think gas prices probably contributed to that significantly, as well as my favorite new phrase I've learned, revenge travel, which is basically people taking their big trips that they put off due to the pandemic travel restrictions. So as things opened this summer, people were taking those bigger trips. And so we saw that reflected in our occupancy numbers here in Siskiyou. I wanted to talk briefly about our event marketing program. We've allocated $60,000 this fiscal year to provide small event marketing awards to community event organizers. We're giving awards in the amount of $3,000, and we have awarded 3 so far in Mount Shasta this fiscal year. One for the Chamber's Winterfest celebration, one for an event series at the Mount Shasta Museum, and then one at the ski park. They're going to be showing a cool film called Magic Hour to kick off the ski season, and so we're really excited about those. I wanted to talk about some new ad placements we've got going on. For the first time ever, we have ads in the Medford and Reading airports, as well as Granzella's. That's something that our lodging property stakeholders have championed for several years, and we haven't had the funds to do it, but due to a couple really good years of revenue, we were able to take part in some of those high dollar ad buys, so that was really exciting. And all of our ads do have QR codes, so we can follow who's tracking them or who's scanning them, where they're from, and sometimes demographics like age, so that's pretty cool. I wanted to talk a little bit about our co-op Google Business Listing Optimization project with Visit California. We were able to work with, I think, 35 local businesses, many of whom were located in Mount Shasta, to optimize their Google business listings. So, when you Google a business and the little thumbnail image pops up and, their location and their store hours, we were able to work with them to get everything accurate and improve, in a lot of cases, the thumbnail image. A lot of them were kind of low res. Sometimes it was just the Google Street View. So we were able to provide those businesses with high-res photography to really put their best foot forward when people Google them. So that was a really cool project. And then I wanted to highlight our relationship with the Siskiyou Outdoor Recreation Alliance, as well as Leave No Trace. I mentioned a lot of urban dwellers coming to Siskiyou during the pandemic, and that resulted in heightened use on a lot of our public lands and our trails, and we were getting some feedback from the local community that we needed to do more messaging about responsible recreation. So we created a pledge. We're calling it the Siskiyou Wander Pledge, and Wander is an acronym for these principles that we expect people to read and to follow when they're here recreating in Siskiyou. And so there's a special page on our website where people can read the pledge and sign it. If they do so, they're entered into a drawing to win a free weekend stay in Siskiyou. We're going to do the drawing for that in December. We've gotten a really great response from that, and we're hoping that it helps kind of mitigate some of the overuse on our public lands. Finally, I wanted to highlight our team's involvement with Grinduro last year, which was a pretty big event for the city, and we've been talking with Sora about how we can help out next year as well. One of the ways that we've been helping is by providing high-res photography and videography that these event organizers can use to promote future events. And so we do have a video I just wanted to show you guys briefly that we did for Sora and the Mount Shasta 4th of July Fun Run. So I think Jeremy has that ready to go. And that's going to show behind you, I think. So yeah, that video was shot and produced by Discover Siskiyou staff, and it's just one example of how we can help market the city's events and bring more people in. So that's it for me. I don't know if you want to ask us questions individually or wait until we're all done, but I'm happy to answer any tourism-related questions.
I just wanted to see if the information that you shared is available to be either emailed to us or somehow that we can push that out to our community.
Yes, I would love your help with that. We have an industry stakeholder site that has all of this information, how people can get connected with our team, and I will make sure to email that.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. I will bring up Quentin. Are you next? Yep.
Okay, good afternoon. Good to see familiar faces. I'm Quentin Gaddy. I'm the Director of Business Development at the EDC, and I'm going to touch on three main items. The status on our EIFD project that we're working on that we touched on at the last council meeting, where we're at with all of our Cdbg projects at the moment, and how we're doing on SBDC and the small business community at the moment. So first, just to rehash the EIFD, this could be the first opportunity to be a rural county-city partnership. There's only one other county-city partnership in the state, and that's the County of Orange and the City of Placentia. And so the idea is to see, will this thing even pencil out in a rural community? Is this law structured in such a way that allows us to utilize the same type of development tools that urban jurisdictions have? And at the end of the day, it can, but if we say it's deficient for X, Y, and Z, we can then relay that information to the state and say, this isn't why it's working for rural communities, this is how you could make it work. Obviously, the big obstacle on here is going to be getting the county to play ball. This is going to be the challenge, and there's a couple things that we need to make very clear in this arrangement. It's the but-for arguments. You know, but for actually doing something, what level of tax are you going to get out of vacant, undeveloped land? And that's the argument that really needs to be drilled home, is that the fiscal impact on all of our budgets is going to benefit from some level of growth if done sustainably, if done smart. The other thing that we need to look at is that some of the pre-existing tax share agreements that had occurred from prior annexation are bizarre, for lack of a better word. They are uneven. They are not congruent with forward thinking and actually developing and doing the land, taking it to the next level. So this idea that we're just okay where we're at, it's not aligning with shifting demographics right now. All of our communities in Siskiyou County, save for the city of Wairika, are aging, and there will need to be workforce who fill the roles that are needed not only to take care of an aging population, but to just provide normal goods and services and conduct business as usual, as we're used to it. So these are the things that we need to be thinking of as we think of this development moving forward. On to the Cdbg projects. I'm going to start with the Microenterprise Assistance Program. I'm starting to wind this down a bit. I've had 25 successful applicants to that program across the county, 6 of which have come from the city of Mount Shasta, and we've provided assistance in the amount of $111,000 to those 6 microenterprises. These are many that were who fell through the cracks of PPP, did not receive other COVID assistance, a couple who had to relocate, a couple who were closed for quite a substantial period of time because the owners were sick themselves. And so this was a very successful program. We're just working with a couple of businesses that are in the queue right now, but we're looking to close down by the end of the expenditure date. The food bank program that we're running with Great Northern Services has also been super successful. This last month, 72 people and 54 households were served at the Mount Shasta pickup location. And so we're doing 10 different locations across the county. Because we achieved good economies of scale with this program, it's running really efficiently and it's helping a lot of families. I know a few of the families myself who benefit from this food who are low income, and it really does go a long ways. Regarding the subsistence payment program, this program is kind of a pain in the butt. It is very burdensome. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work out of Muriel. It takes a lot of work out of the city's cash flow. And it's complicated, it's got a significant administrative burden, and we're looking at having a budget shortfall based on its current expenditure rate. So we're going to be looking at reallocating some funds from the other existing CV programs towards the subsistence payment program so we can run that one through its contract date without having to close it early. It is helping a lot of folks. It is very impactful. But we might not want to take it on in the future, save for another once in 100-year pandemic. It's a lot of work. Moving on to the SBDC, that's the Small Business Development Center. So we work real closely with small businesses. Just to give you an example, without breaking confidentiality, I've helped a couple of businesses in Mount Shasta just get their LLC established, helped a couple who have gone brick and mortar, and helping a couple expand, getting some pretty significant SBA loans on some new commercial property. We've worked with 28 out of the city of Mount Shasta in the past year. A couple of things that we'd like to highlight with that. One of the cool things that we've been able to do to provide businesses is we got access to this artificially intelligence location placemaking data service. And so what this allows me to do is it allows me to sit down with a business and draw a geographic range around their place of business, and I can tell them all sorts of things based on the data that picks up from credit card transactions, from cookies and web traffic, from people's cell phones. It tells me foot traffic. It tells me when people are coming and where they're going afterwards. It tells me what time of the day, what days of the week. So we've been able to work with a couple businesses on adjusting their open hours to be able to increase sales with it. It tells us where's their visitor's journey, where are they coming from. We've got, as you may be aware, you have a huge amount of tourists coming from the Bay Area, from Los Angeles, but we've also got a lot of people coming over from Dallas, believe it or not. And I'm able to provide all this data to businesses so they can optimize their storefront operations. It's been super helpful. The big business concerns right now are workforce and the cost of everything going up. So it's harder for folks to hire people. It's harder for folks to retain people. A lot of businesses you'll see the owners work in the front cash register because they have no other choice. They're closing on days and times they could be open because they're having real hard time staffing. And this is especially acute in our seasonal peaks. A lot of the summertime, wintertime traffic places a higher demand on businesses, and they're not able to keep up right now. This is, since the start of COVID, Siskiyou County has 1,000 fewer people in the workforce. In a county of 40,000, that's really substantial. Last but not least, I've been working with a disabled veteran business in Mount Shasta, and we discovered a policy pitfall in the DVBE certification process. And it has to do with how LLCs can get certified and what happens when that veteran is married. And it turns out that if their spouse has any ownership of their business whatsoever, they're ineligible of becoming a DVBE. So I've been working with that business. We wrote a letter to Senator and Assemblywoman Dolly's office, and we've been in contact with CalEd. And even the folks at California Department of General Services said, we're aware of the issue, we can't advocate based on it, but it's on our legislative wish list. And they know that it makes no sense. They've been dealing with it for about a decade. And so we're trying to see if we can make some change. And it was a Mount Shasta business that stumbled upon that. And so I'm rattling a couple cages there. If you guys have any questions, I'd welcome to take any.
Has Siskiyou Economic Development Council been approached at all by Josh and a, what is it called, Visit Mount Shasta project to see how SCEDC and that project might coordinate?
And what's the project specifically?
That was tourism. That would be.
Yeah, it was.
Or Heather.
Yeah, if it's tourism related, I would defer to Heather on that one.
Okay. I'll ask at the end then. Ask again at the end, unless you want to answer it now.
Yeah, go for it.
Were you referring to Josh at
Yeah.
Ascension Aesthetic, I think is the name. Yeah, so we have talked, I know they're doing some really great photo video work, and so we have had a few initial conversations about how we can help amplify their marketing efforts by sharing on our platforms, and so we're still kind of in discussion with how we might be able to work together, since obviously we have the same goal, and so we don't really want to overlap on what we're doing, but I think, you know, we can work together to each enhance each other's projects, so things are in the works.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, question through the chair. Question about the EIFD efforts by Cosmont and the council. You have any feeling whatsoever of what the county's position is regarding EIFDs at all? Favorable, indifferent, negative, entirely negative?
So if I was to put myself in the county shoes, the first thing I'd be thinking of is potential fiscal impact on the increased cost of services, increased cost of traffic. I can't comment on the county's opinion on how it may feel about like overall development, like where, like for example, in 10 years, what should the population of Siskiyou County be? You know, I really can't speak to those varied positions. I know that in order to champion this and get this through the hoop, we'd have to look at what was required in previous instances. We only have one to look at. And in the Orange County Placentia case, it really was successful because it was fully championed by the county supervisor whose territory included the city of Placentia. So that would be a greater conversation, I think, with Supervisor Valenzuela to really go in that. But it's really going to be incumbent on the fiscal impact analysis. What we need to really hammer down is that their forecasted growth, their net present value of investment by retaining AB8 slice of all those parcels, you know, we could build two scenarios. We could build one with the EIFD. We could build one where they're stagnant and say, okay, this is how much you would get based on your current AB8 proportion, net, you know, any kind of like low-income housing or anything that might not create property tax value, and just forecast that and see, okay, this is how much you're gonna net. Cosmont's gonna produce really conservative estimates. I'm kind of there with Todd on that one, that I think it's gonna be substantially larger in the long run, especially if you look at Tahoe's only got so many places they can build. So you have to make the argument that but for this investment, you're just leaving cash on the table. It's gonna go you know, we don't want it to go undeveloped. We want to see mixed use. We want to see homes. We want to see greater availability. We want to see stuff that's going to drive the increase in property values. And that's what this development is going to do. So they kind of have a hungry hippos mentality in terms of, you know, they don't want to give up tax, and they want, and their position is like, if we sit on it long enough, it'll develop anyways, and we can get that. You need to make the argument that no, we need to intervene to get some infrastructure going, and it's either got to come from impact fees with developers or grants like the REAP grant or municipal bonds from an EIFD, you know, and likely you got to put them all together in a capital stack just to make the project actually pencil. And it requires, you know, everything. They don't have to contribute 100%. They can contribute 50. They can contribute 75, 25. But it's going to require some skin in the game for this to pencil.
So on a very nuts and bolts level, it all comes down to, first I called Angela Davis and kind of primed her on the call that she's going to be receiving from Joe from Cosmont. And that was supposed to happen late last week, and I haven't touched base with Joe. And it's just laying down the groundwork of basically what an EIFD is and the number of partnerships that are out there in California right now that are in place and those that are in the works, what it will do for us, and the fact that it has the potential to bring in a lot of money. The trick is when Joe, you know, and I need to get the update from him, when he's able to lay out the specific scenarios and and you know, 3 different levels, the low, mod, and high expectations for growth for the areas that would be included in the EIFD, you know, just letting them know that the market research we've done is sound, 1. 2, we are going to see growth, you know, and ultimately we're going to have a cost-sharing agreement, and it's all going to hinge on that. So I need to hear back from Joe on what the response was, whether it was tepid or not. And I also need to talk to Ed Valenzuela this week to also just kind of see if he can grease the wheels a little bit on the conversation.
Thank you very much for all of your work.
Thank you.
You're almost done with us. I'll just, I'm Corey Hayden, and I have the opportunity to just introduce our Siskiyou Farmco program to you. If this is, imagine, it's like Sunset Magazine does a Best of the West box of amazing products and food items from the West. Well, Siskiyou Farmco is like the best of Siskiyou. And our consumers, we have about 50 to 80 beta testers right now testing out the site. And so on Wednesdays, customers can pick up their Best of Siskiyou box in Mount Shasta at 9:30 in the morning, in Greenview at 12:30 in the afternoon, and Wairika at 3:30. There's 3 pickup options. So we, first of all, invite you to be consumers or beta testers to test the platform. It was developed as a business strategy for our food producers. So if you think about everything from Castle Rock water to Pyrolastic chocolates to Star Walker beef, which is a producer that you see at the Mount Shasta market, all of these products are on one site and are available at one convenient checkout. So for those of you who enjoy shopping on Amazon or Etsy, where you get to shop across creators or products with one convenient checkout, that is what Siskiyou Farmco does. We're really proud to have a pickup location in Mount Shasta on Wednesdays, and we'll be sure to share the information with all of you because we think it's very, very exciting. In terms of, I have a informational pamphlet that just kind of highlights many points that Quentin made. It also talks about Siskiyou Farmco as well and some of our work this year, but I will not go into details. It's something that you can take home and read. And just thank you for hearing from us today. We'd love to come and present to council. We have a great working relationship with Todd and Muriel through the Landing Project, the Brownfields Project, now the EIFD Project, the Small Business Development Center, and Discover Siskiyou. So thank you for your time today, and I'll leave this with Muriel to, actually, I'm just going to give Muriel one because she's one of the team too. I'm not going to make her pass it around.
Where on Wednesday?
Yes, we're on Wednesdays. It is in the same parking lot as Mechanics Bank and Ray's Food Place, and we have a big pop-up and a refrigerated truck, and then the beautiful box items. Everything's with the flowers and the chocolate and the wine, and the breakfast sausage is all in your convenient Siskiyou Farmco box with one checkout. So we're customers order by Sunday at noon for pickup on Wednesdays. So thank you guys so much. We'll be sure that we share that link with all of you if you would like to shop on this in this manner. So thank you for your time. Any questions for any of us?
I think that was very quick, and I'd like a clarification.
Certainly.
So what are we shopping for, where, and how?
Yes. So so you are shopping for locally produced foods from Siskiyou County producers, creators, and makers. So you will see Northland Coffee. Am I saying it right? Northbound Coffee? Northbound Coffee, sorry. Northbound Coffee. You'll see local wine. You'll see Acme Salt, Castle Rock Water, Pyrolastic Chocolates. You'll see beef from 3 or 4 producers. Eggs, all fresh items or food items made from local Siskiyou County businesses. And it's all curated on one site called Siskiyou Farmco that the EDC created in terms of the technology and the marketing. And we're just really proud to amplify these local businesses who sell local food, right? So if anything told us the pandemic, a lot of people wanted to shop local and eat locally. And this brings that experience to all of us. And it really gives Siskiyou County a moment in the spotlight. We have some incredible food producers here, and it gives those foods a brand and a marketing platform and an online marketplace to sort of meet new customers so that customers and producers can meet in the same space and they can grow and customers can eat locally.
So the website again is?
I found it.
That girl, SiskiyouFarmco.org? Com, thank you. That's always that internal conversation. Which one's it going to be? SiskiyouFarmco.com. Thanks for letting me just launch you guys into that space. I didn't really say what it was before I was already telling you what was there.
Members of the community can go to SiskiyouFarmco.com.
Yes.
See a variety of wonderful things that are either made or produced locally, put in their order and pick it up
On Wednesdays, right here in Mount Shasta.
on Wednesday at Ray's Food
Yep,
Place?
Exactly.
Parking lot.
At 9:30 in the morning, yes. So when folks visit SiskiyouFarmco.com, you'll first be prompted to be a beta tester. So this is an early phase where 50 to 80 shoppers are testing out the site and giving us feedback on how their order goes and how things taste, and if it's confusing or not confusing. And so, so the first step is we're just inviting folks to test out the site before we really release it out to the masses. So we're essentially inviting you to be a beta tester if you would like. We'd love to have you. And we'll make sure we send a follow-up link too. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Indeed, thank you. Any other questions before we move on to public comment? I'll take the heads down as a no. Kathy, we're going to open up for public comment. Anybody online or
We have 3 hands so far.
in the audience who wants to speak? Darius Syed.
For our first online public comment, I apologize if I mispronounce your name. Our first speaker will be Darius Syed.
You said it perfectly right, My name is Darius Syed, and I'm an outreach analyst for the Department of Insurance with Community Relations and Outreach Branch. And I'm happy to come here today and give you an update what we are doing on your behalf. It's a wildfire season, and I just wanted to touch bases on what we have been doing, our Safer from Wildfire framework, and interagency partnership between Insurance Commissioner Ricardo Lara and the Emergency Response and Readiness Agencies and Governor Newsom's administration. Its purpose is to protect life, homes, and businesses by reducing wildfire risk. We're currently working with Cal OES, Cal Fire, Governor's Office of Planning and Research, and the California Public Utilities. With all the wildfires that we have been experiencing and the climate change, homes and businesses need insurance they can rely on. So basically, it's more of a ground-up approach, we call it like SFW 123 plan. Number one, protect the structure, such as making sure your roof and vents are up to date. Number two, the immediate surroundings, such as brush too close to your home or any flammable items stored under your deck. And number three, finally, is the community. Involve your entire community to prevent wildfires from catching and spreading to other homes and businesses in the neighborhood. This includes enhanced infrastructures and programs like Firewise. So good news is that a few weeks ago, Commissioner Lara submitted his insurance pricing regulations to the California Office of Administrative Law that would recognize and reward wildfire safety and mitigation efforts made by homeowners and businesses. The regulation is the first in nation, requiring insurance companies to provide discounts to consumers under the Safer from Wildfire framework created by the California Department of Insurance, as I said, in partnership with state emergency preparedness agencies. Each insurance company will then need to submit their plans to implement these, and once they are approved by the department, they will then be in place. We are expecting this whole process to be done by January 2023. So I just wanted to come here. I am your outreach analyst, and I just wanted to let you know that the Department of Insurance is there for any of your constituent needs, and our dedicated staff of experts can answer your specific question. But if they don't pick up, our callback rate is under 2 minutes. So we are very proud to let you know that we are here for your service, and please feel free to reach out to me for any insurance needs. Thank you so much.
Mr. Mayor, could the speaker perhaps give her contact information to Deputy City Clerk, and so that could be provided to us?
Definitely, I'll do that in the chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Peggy, I see your name on the board. Whenever you're ready.
Okay, I'm ready. Are you ready for me? One slide there. Okay, well, good evening. Pretty interesting city council meeting so far. What I'm doing in my public comment here is requesting clarification. In the August 15, 2022 city manager report was a statement where he was working on a general plan amendment to record a zoning change that was not reflected in the last update. So my question would be, I would request if we could have an idea of what that location was, where the parcels were that were of the zoning change, what the zoning was changed from and what it was changed to, and specifically what aspect of the general plan is that amendment going to take place. So that's it, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Peggy. Hi, Johanna. Whenever you're ready.
Hi, good evening. It's Johanna Altorfer, and first of all, I just want to say I really enjoyed the marketing presentation and video. That was really good. I like to see that. On tonight's agenda item, there's an item regarding SB1, and I had some questions about it, and I did not get clarity before the meeting. But what I'm wondering is if some of that funding that's by the state of California for road repair and maintenance, that maybe some of those funds could be used for things like road improvements on I-5 and Pine Street to reduce the noise, because it is loud 24/7, between an average of 50 decibels to 80 to 82 decibels. And that's really loud. And that's a constant 24/7. And some of the simple things that could be done is just putting dirt berms in or oleanders, etc. Or like on Pine, they could do an asphalt skim coat. The other thing that I'm wondering that the SB1 funding could be used for is for an underpass on Alma or Lake. as an emergency egress in case of, in case of emergency. And because we have the railroad tracks there and people could get stuck if the train is stuck on there or anything else like that. And then I had another comment on the EIFDs, and I haven't fully investigated this yet, but I did some preliminary looking up, and there is something called, so I'd like to understand, I guess, why we're not pursuing something called a CRIA, a C-R-I-A. It's similar to an EIFD, however, the CRIA has actually a low-income housing requirement, where it has a percentage that's actually required to go to low-income housing, which the EIFD does not. And then they all have a CEQA, there's a CEQA commitment, and I'd like to understand a little bit more about that. Is that CEQA commitment going to be understood up front? Or, just so that we make sure we, include our environment process in that. And I think that's it, and thank you.
Thank you, Johanna.
There are no more public comments.
There are no more. Okay. Is there anybody in the audience here that would like to speak? Well, in that case, we will end public comment and move to council and staff comments. Todd, you want to start us off here?
Sure. So, as most of you know, I've been traveling much of the month, but I do have two significant developments that I'd like to share. One, you know about the receivership process for the Nest in the old hospital. The Nest property, I was approached late last week by Josh LaFrance, the folks who just built the Summit Loft projects, just catty-corner to City Hall, and is working on a purchase and sale agreement with the owner of that property. He wants to pick it up and develop it. So that's good news. It saves a lot of money, saves a lot of time from actually having to go through receivership. And it seems like we've got a willing partner in the owner. But, it's only real until we've got paper signed, when we have paper signed. So, and the second thing is I met with the owner of the former Crystal Geyser site, One Shasta is what it's called now. And one of the things that I pitched to him is that we need a parcel of property that he owns that's at the right height to provide a new water tank for the city. And so he has agreed in writing to give us that property and to give us easements for access and for utilities. So he's given us the go-ahead now to go out and survey the property, and he's giving us access to the well compound, so we can do that. And good news, we're going to have that property, and now we'll be able to resize that tank to a point where we can serve full build out for for the city itself, but also when we get One Shasta annexed into the city, moving from a 500,000 gallon tank to a 1 million gallon tank, which will also help with fire prevention. We'll have better capacity, better flows, higher pressure, et cetera. So
The person who's buying the Nest or wanting to buy the Nest, did they indicate what their plans were? Same type of thing, long-term rental? Did they indicate plans?
He's just trying to acquire the property and highest and best use. His big what he's intimated to me is additional housing. But he just wants to purchase the property because I think he's getting it at a fairly decent rate. And he's great to work with, which is a bonus. He's great to work with, so that always helps.
Chiefs, anything from you all this evening?
There we go. Just real quick, we had a pet killed on Lake Street the other day. I think that's the 5th animal that's been hit over some time on Lake Street between Alder and Magnolia there. So there's been some people coming in wanting the street limits reduced and that kind of things going on. So I was going to update council. So the current street survey was done in 2014. The surveyors, Schlumberger Consulting Engineers, they came back and they've done another survey which takes us out to 2024. For that stretch of the road specifically, they have an 85% tile rating of 34 miles per hour. The 50% tile during the study was 30 miles per hour. So the city went with 30 miles per hour, so we went far below the 80% that is typically done as far as that. Some of the notes for that is during the survey, when the radar trailer was up running, taking pictures and doing it, we got speeds of a lowest speed of 11 miles per hour and a high speed of 74. And if you look through the speed charts and stuff, you can have certain cars, most of the cars, like I said, were going 30, 34, but 50s and 60s were observed on that roadway. I have put the trailer back up there. It should be back up tomorrow, back up there, and having some officers do some extra radar. But in order to, it would require a full survey again to get that speed limit reduced. And in order to stop people from speeding, you really can't do that unless you have an officer 24/7. But we hear the citizens, we understand it, and it's tough when a pet especially is hit and killed on that. So we're going to put some extra work up on that roadway. But again, it is below what the surveyors came in with for the 80% tile. So yeah, we're going to keep working that way and just give you an update because I don't know if they've come to council or not, but I wanted to let you know that we're on it. And we're going to have the trailer up tomorrow and head to charge, and we're going to have officers running radar up there.
Thank you, Chief.
I have a question, if you don't. In addition to, there was some talk about maybe putting some temporary speed bumps there as a way to slow people down in lieu of having a full-time officer. I can foresee what you might say, that could create some more issue than not. Vehicle damage or something, if you're not expecting it, would be my first guess, but is that a possibility?
I don't know what the possibility of that. I think that's something that have to go through the road department, engineering to make sure that we're putting out rumble strips correctly. I think it would take signage to say, hey, rumble strips ahead, like we see in other places. Yeah. But I think if that's a direction that city wanted to go, I think we'd have to get with Public Works and the engineers to see if that is an alternative. Another thing we could look at doing, is to get a lot of these pedestrian and street signs that are solar paneled, like Wairika has one going by the schools that lights up, tells you your speed, is maybe installing a permanent speed sign that flashes at people going up and down the road. That just might be some other option. But realistically, there's no way we can because it's the roadway width, it's downhill, to slow people down other than having a police car sitting in the middle of the road with the lights flashing or rumble strips. You're going to get the person that speeds, and unfortunately accidents and bad things happen, but we will address it as best as we can. So
I can add to that. Speed bumps, according to AASHTO, are typically not allowed on arterials or arterioles. It's a liability issue to just, people's transmission falling out, even though it's their own fault. The issue, obviously, with the street, I'm not telling anything that they don't already know, is it's a straight stretch. We've got a hill, and we've got a long stretch where people can accelerate. and we have very wide roads. If we wanted to really address this in some way, the best thing that could happen, one of two things: a road diet, where we ended up with wide bike lanes, so we were narrowing the roadway for vehicles along there, or if we were able to get enough money through a grant, if we were able to do the bump out treatment. But it really comes down to it's too wide. You know, there are possibilities, again, very expensive, if we were able to break it up with a mid-block crossing that was activated, you know, when people want to cross it. That's also anything that forces people to look, you know, if more things to look at, it forces them to slow down. If it's narrower, it forces people to slow down. That's really the way to get at it. And what the chief said about when doing a warrant study, we're looking at the 80th or 85th percentile of speeds on that roadway. We got a waiver in this case to go down to 50%. And, you know, so we brought it down as far as we can. And, you know, when we have that study done, we also have to register it with the state.
One more follow-up, sorry. While we're on the subject, coincidentally, I had a constituent come up to me and ask this question, and then something happened personally where my oldest son was on an electric scooter headed, I'm really bad with directions, so I'm gonna like uphill towards on Alma by the supermarket. He was in the crosswalk and someone blew through it and hit him while he was on the scooter. He's fine, but the scooter not so fine, and the people asked if he needed help. He said no, so now we have no idea what happened. But so that's like one of those infamous stops that's been a problem forever. And I know that the counter to that is if we do put in another stop, that the locals are going to fly through, and it might be more harm than not. But my follow-up question to that is, someone asked that they're having a really hard time on the Washington-Macleod intersection, where Macleod, you know, through traffic just flies down, and it's really hard to go across. And what can our constituents do to kind of start that conversation to get a change of stop signs or that kind of thing?
Two things we can do. So we run into the same issue on Alma that we have on Lake Street. We're 1 block away from a stoplight. So I think we get into some engineering and some traffic problems by putting a four-way. There's not much more we can do with the Chestnut Alma intersection. It already has a flashing red light with a flashing yellow light. For people who don't know, Alma from start to finish is 25 miles per hour. So we get up there, we'll run some radar and stuff on it. Washington and that stretch from Washington where the road gets really wide up to Adams Street has been a problem. It's been a problem for years. We get complaints on it all the time. We will send officers up there, run radar and stuff on that. For citizens, they can petition the city to have that survey to see if a four-way stop would be appropriate up there at the Washington-Macleod. To me, not knowing, you know, the rules and regulations of the roads as far as what the engineers and stuff have to do, seems like a logical four-way stop. It would slow people down. We got the four-way at the next block up on Adams. So that might be something where they could come to the city, or the city could do it on their own and say, hey, we need a four-way stop here. The only other option, so that would be my suggestion, was I would support a four-way stop there. The one on Alma, I would look into maybe the cost of. One other thing is everything's going to LEDs now, and looking into stop signs, they've got the big red, because we do get a lot of people that run that stop sign. We do get a lot of accidents in that area. We get accidents vehicle on vehicle, vehicle pedestrian, and since we've got a school there, it's bad. So about the only other thing we could add there is get the red stop signs with the lights on them to let the people know, especially since we've got detours going through there now.
Right.
But
thank you. That
you're
was
welcome.
very informative.
Chief, your predecessor had talked about the possibility of a temporary sort of roundabout or a instant sort of roundabout and had some literature on how that could be done. I don't know if that's something that might still be available to you. This would be for the Macleod, Washington location.
Okay. I don't know what it would take to put something into the cost and stuff like that. I think the most cost-effective thing for Washington and Macleod, I'm sorry, would be to go to a four-way stop sign. I'm not sure what the cost would. Are you talking?
Well, I think the concerns about four-way stop sign is in wintertime, the snow or ice, I want to call it a portable roundabout. I'm sure I'm not using the right terminology.
No, that is a bad intersection when it snows, with people having to stop because of the hill and stuff there. So again, it would take an engineer to come out and do a study to see what the cost would be and what we would need for right-of-ways and room-wide. Because the problem with that intersection from my standpoint is we go from a very narrow roadway coming up Macleod Avenue between A, B, and C, and then the roadway almost doubles in width. I don't know if that's 100% accurate, but that's what it looks like from Washington up. It gets so much wider, so you got a wider road that's offset, and then it's narrow, slams it in there. That would be up, if that would be council's direction, it would probably have to go through a whole engineering thing to put a roundabout up there. But at a fairly cost-effective way, downtown where we have a lot more problems, would be to maybe get some signs with the lights on them and stuff like that.
Well, is it possible for staff to look into?
So I think Muriel's got a comment, but what I would say about roundabouts, I can look into it. Here's my concern with a roundabout is when you've got heavy snowfall, if you have a four-way stop sign, you are going to make every attempt you can to stop. When you've got a roundabout, the expectation is that you slow down and then enter that intersection if other vehicles aren't coming. And my concern is that you end up with a skating rink in the center where you have multiple crashes. So I can look into it. Also with roundabouts, the design and the curvature, the radius, all that stuff needs to be designed pretty carefully. Mm-hmm. It's usually what you're referring to as a test where we put it in place, usually with low-cost materials to see how it works for a period of time, mm-hmm. and then if it works, then we see about coming up with the money to actually install it. But I would say that with the downhill lie and the amount of ice, you're actually better off with a four-way stop. I mean, they're not great solutions either way, but if your expectation coming into a roundabout is to slow as opposed to stop, you're going to have a lot of people sliding into each other. And Muriel, you had a comment?
No, actually it was discussed. It had to do with actually all of those places that don't have stop signs that are downhill. Mm-hmm. The reason, as I remember going back in time with some of the studies that had been done in the past, is because of the snow. It was always about the snow.
If I recall, in past years, we were told stop signs couldn't be put there, or were not advisable to be put there because they likely would create more accidents. So that's the reason that the roundabout was an issue that came up as a possibility.
You know, I mean, basically, again, not to beat a dead horse, but I think a roundabout would make things worse. I mean, if we're really going to get after four-way stop, then it's really coming down to, I don't know what we're using to treat the roads up here, but if we're dumping more calcium chloride when we've got a snow event, we're going to have a better opportunity to stop vehicles, especially on a downhill lie. But I can look at it.
Appreciate that.
Yep.
Jonathan?
Don't talk about yours yet.
So we have been seeing a slight increase in unauthorized burnings lately. As everyone's aware, we got a little bit of precipitation a couple weeks ago. That did not lift the dooryard burn ban. We are still in dooryard burn ban effect. So spread the word, make sure everybody's calling, making sure they're calling before they burn, but no burning is still allowed. So,
thank you.
No foreseeable date that will be lifted either. Yeah. We need a lot more precip.
Muriel, have you, okey-doke?
Yeah, through the chair. So I just want to go over some things with the EIFD in case there was some confusion. Because someone said at last week's meeting, and I think I might have been one of the persons involved, if the actual enhanced infrastructure finance district is strictly within city limits, the county still has to work with us on the tax increment and how they have to improve the district because the tax increment, the increased taxes from the development still would go to the county and they would distribute the funds to the different agencies that get a portion of it, such as the Mount Shasta Rec District right here. We would not, we need the cooperation of the county. So after last meeting with Cosmont, I went back and reread all the stuff I used to read about EIFD. Been a big proponent of it. I was a big fan of redevelopment in San Jose when I lived there. That pretty much rebuilt San Jose, so I'm enthusiastic about tax increment financing and districts thereof. So, for example, let's say the 450 acres that Cosmont was talking about developing ends up being just 400, just round figures. And the value, the taxable value of, since most of the land is vacant, ends up increasing, and it's not inconceivable to $2.5 million per acre, whether it's housing or industrial, commercial development, any combination. That will lead to about $1 billion in tax increment monies. However, you can't just take 1% of that and put it towards the district. Approximately 40% of that money will go to the school districts of the area. That's based on a lot of different laws, and those laws were taken into effect when EIFD and CREA and other tax increment structures were formed. The school districts also cannot benefit from the EIFD, so just wanted to clarify that. A better multiple would be 0.4%, maybe 0.5%. I think 0.4. So multiply the billion by 0.004 and you get $4 million a year. And that's substantial, and you multiply that out over 20, 30, 40 years, and you've got a lot of money to work with depending on how you use it and how you finance things. As I said at the meeting, the district doesn't have to be contiguous. You can have South Mount Shasta, such as at the landing, and you can have North Mount Shasta, such as north of Spring Hill, as the finance district. You could have parts infill area. You could do a lot of different things. It doesn't have to be a contiguous district. And the beneficiaries don't necessarily have to be within those boundaries either. They just have to be arguably useful for the people, or the people within the district. So in other words, if you create housing in the areas just mentioned, improving the parks, which may not be in the district, would be a reasonable benefit for those people, and the monies could be used that way, and this district could use a lot of help. Which was going to lead me to say to you, Todd, if this actually proceeds, I think the rec district should be part of the conversation as far as possibly giving up their tax increment in exchange for improvements, but that's a long way down the road, so. Hope that was clear.
Great point.
I think it's possibly the only way to spur substantial growth and some side improvements, is whether it's a CREA for housing or whether it's EIFD for general growth and possible improvements such as with the rec district. Yeah.
You know, and not to go down a rabbit hole, but, you know, being able to go outside of the boundaries of those EIFD, of the EIFD, things like money for disaster prevention, fire prevention, and the ability to work on environmentally sound projects like funding, say, a solar farm, that kind of stuff. That's all the kind of things that we can be looking at.
I'd like to hear about the league conference. I wasn't here.
It was wonderful, and I have lots of points to bring up at our workshop later next month.
Thank you.
Yeah.
City Manager, are there any committee updates?
The DIAC is meeting on Wednesday, and the reconstituted library committee is meeting.
It's not set yet, but it's looking like October 5th.
Looking like October 5th.
And Wednesday, City Hall, or Wednesday where for DIAC?
For DIAC, at City Hall at 8:30.
Okay, thanks.
Through the chair. So can you give us an update on the status of the Planning Commission as far as do they meet or not meeting, but what is going on with that commission?
Yeah, it's, we have had meetings. It's less regular if we had a planner on. We do have a planning commission meeting tomorrow night to go over the active transportation plan, the draft final, and to take comments on that. So we are meeting. We need to get a current and, solid planner on to get back to normal schedule.
And any update on planner?
We have not had a bite yet. I think part of the problem may be that applicants are scared off by, the idea of being shared between two cities, meaning you need to learn two municipal codes, and that their time may be stretched a little bit thin. So we might want to consider going out for that planner to serve just the city. Part of the concern is if we were going to share that planner now with the amount of, first of all, the city manager and Weed has kind of backed off on wanting help from Mount Shasta because they've got outside planning help that they're really happy with. But of course, they're in flux given what's happened with the fires. So I don't know what they're planning there. My concern is if we were to sign an agreement sharing time with the planner, that time would be gobbled up by the immense yawning chasm of need that Weed is going to have for the foreseeable future.
So what's proposed action and time frame on it?
So our post for a shared planner with Weed and City of Mount Shasta is about up. What we would do next is go out and remove the idea of sharing with Weed, and I think we'll get some applicants that way.
And the bulletin is up when? You said about up. I don't know what that means.
So Jody is on vacation, I believe, through the week, and as soon as she's back, she has been asked to repost in all the same locations with removing the portion of sharing time with Weed.
So put out a bulletin just for
Yep.
a Mount Shasta planner. Okay.
Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. The city manager recommends approval of the following consent agenda items. All resolutions and ordinances on this agenda or added hereto shall be introduced or adopted as applicable by title only, and the full reading thereof is hereby waived. A, approval of the minutes on September 12th, 2022 for the regular city council meeting. B, the approval of disbursements for accounts payable for September 9th, September 20th, 22, and total gross payroll and taxes for the period ending September 4th, 2022. C is the monthly investment report, and D is authorizing application for the permanent local housing allocation program, non-entitlement local government competitive component.
Mayor Collins, I'd ask that item A be voted on separately. That item A be voted on separately. Since I was not here at the last meeting, I would not be eligible to vote on that.
Right, you will not vote on this.
So if you could take that separately from B through D, I'd appreciate that.
Yes.
All right, so this is going to be a two-part approval process. So I move to approve consent agenda item A by title only.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Okay, moving on. I move to approve consent agenda items B, C, and D is CCR-22-29 by title only.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? So going to agenda item number 8, CAL FIRE Volunteer Fire Capacity Grant Agreement, which seems relatively straightforward. Thank you for the write-up, and especially, Jonathan, for the part about this is coming out of the property tax increment, not out of the general funds. That's kind of a key thing. Would you give us a summary of this, please? Start us off.
Yep. Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. Earlier this year, the fire department applied for the CAL FIRE grant for radios, and we were notified a couple weeks ago that we have been awarded the grant. The amount is the $9,908 and some change. It is a 50-50 grant, so that is the city will have to provide matching funds. The fire department has the funds available in Measure A, which is for the equipment purchases. The reason this is before you tonight is that CAL FIRE requires a resolution approving the grant agreement and authorizing a signer. The fire department applied for this grant last year and was not successful. These radios are a much-needed piece of equipment. Most of our current radios have reached the outdated mark, and when they break, they are unable to be repaired due to the parts are no longer made for that model. Happy to answer any questions.
This might be for Muriel, but Chief. So are you saying the funds to match are within one of your budgets, or?
It's the Measure A funding.
So
Yeah, it's
you
consider
Measure A,
this which is for equipment.
Right.
Which this meets the criteria.
Okay. So far as the overall budget per year, it wouldn't require an adjustment, we would go through that process?
I can certainly do that for sure.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions from council? Catherine, anybody want to speak on this?
We don't have any hands raised.
Anybody in the audience? That would be Jean. Let me bring it back to council. Anybody feel like they need some clarification or want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve CAL FIRE Volunteer Fire Capacity Grant Agreement to match the funds and adopt CCR-22-30.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We'll move on to the City of Mount Shasta's local streets and roads funding allocation, which is SB1. Finance Director, you want to kind of introduce this to us?
Sure. Every year, we present to council a plan and a list of projects for road rehabilitation within the city of Mount Shasta. This is specifically our Fund 29, which is the road rehab funding that we've had since, I believe, 2016 or 17. It's a little bit different than the gas tax funding, in which this particular funding wants an actual resolution each year for what projects you're going to do and what your plans are, which is above and beyond what the regular gas tax funding does. And in this case, the projects we're deciding to do this year will be a chip seal project in the Water Street, Berry Street, that whole section of town to be chip sealed. The actual cost of the chip sealing is going to be somewhere around $170,000, give or take a bit. Our funding for this year is at about $68,000, I believe. So what we're going to be doing is using some of the funding that we have received from prior years, which is typically what we do, so we can get more done in one particular year. It's basically more bang for the buck. So we kind of do an every other year kind of thing when we're doing chip sealing, so we can do a bigger portion of a particular area. I believe this also includes Lake Street West as well. I think the particular streets are listed in the resolution as to which projects we're going to be doing. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I do. I don't understand why we are doing the particular streets that are listed, and why we are not doing East Lake Street or Washington.
Well, I can answer that. It's not, those particular streets are in other projects that are going to be coming forward at a later date. Yes, there is a road rehabilitation, actually a priority list that our Public Works Director works with our engineer to determine which particular places are up next for rehabilitation. Some of the streets, like you mentioned, East Lake Street, is going to need actually more work probably than a typical chip seal, as to some of the other, I can't even remember the streets he told me the other day, and I can't remember them, but that's the process. There's a priority list. We try to do a particular area and do as large an area as we can with the funding that we have available. Leads us into the next year. We'll probably be able to do as much chip seal the following year than we will be doing this next summer. So we'll have actually 2 years in a row that we'll be doing some chip seal.
And Muriel, if I can follow up also, we received a letter from Michael Williams, and I think another citizen asking why there was no money for sidewalk repair and improvement or bike and complete street projects. Frankly, I'm shocked that we still have the sidewalk that we do between Pepsi and Tri-Counties Bank, which on both sides. Yeah.
So I can answer that. I've had a conversation since then offline with Mr. Williams. The bottom line is when we get a certain amount of money from the LTC, it's pretty minimal. And when you're making decisions about what you're going to do about your road network, and you have a very limited amount of money, the thing that you need to focus on most is on upkeep of your roadways as much as you possibly can, because it's much easier to keep your roads in some semblance of decent shape rather than having to rebuild them completely. So the plan is to chase down grants for active transportation, and in conversations with Michael, he's actually offered some time on a couple grants that are going to be coming up, and both of us with transportation backgrounds, we're trying to put some active transportation grant applications in where we can grab a lot more money.
So let me ask this. For anybody who has walked up Lake Street on either side, there's a sidewalk area which is a substantial issue. Can any of the money be used to fix that?
So it gets back to the issue. You get more bang for the buck by chip sealing cracking and spalling pavement than you would by replacing sidewalks. Sidewalks are equally as important, but I think we'd be better off chasing grant money for that or potentially through a STIP project.
All it takes is one trip and fall, and it pays for itself.
So, through the chair, so I guess we're having an open discussion here. So we have roads that can benefit from chip seal, which I've been told can help the road survive 5 to 10 more years. That's the hope usually. We have plenty of roads that need to be completely rehabilitated. That means you tear them up and redo the base, and that's very expensive, $1 million a mile at least. So if it's less than a mile, fraction thereof, whatever. But sidewalks, I thought, in most cases, if not all, were the responsibility of the property owners in our city.
Correct.
And they're not doing anything, and I don't think they ever will, which will lead to a future agenda item I'm going to mention, because we as a city need to make a decision if we're going to continue with this, which means there'll be no improvements except for the occasional grant, which I think is going to... Do the grants actually go to sidewalks? Is that a possibility? Or when it's the responsibility of your property owners? It's not, you would be therefore subsidizing your property owners. Does that need to change first before you start using grant money on sidewalks, et cetera?
So I do not know a municipality in which I've worked or had been associated with where the sidewalks were not the responsibility of the frontage of the property owner, and that's just standard procedure. You can chase grant money if there are sections that are no man's land and you want to replace those sidewalks, but it comes down to being the responsibility of the property owner on which that gap exists on a property frontage.
Well, as Tim was mentioning, somebody's responsible for Washington Street. I can tell you other, like Alder and Castle, and these are places I walk all the time. Alma is very nice because I think we, through the help of grants, rebuilt that whole sidewalk. We just have a problem with sidewalks. It's not going away, and I just don't believe unless we get really forceful with the people that own property in Mount Shasta, something to discuss, or some middling deal, which I will suggest later. So in other words, I guess what I'm leading to here is, it sounds like most of this money should go to the roads, either for chip seal or for paving, because at this point, those are public entities, public assets that these monies are meant for, whereas sidewalks right now are quasi-private and the responsibility of
by far the biggest bang for the buck as opposed to rebuilding. And, there are ways to get at this. I mean, in Dunsmuir, there were some hardship cases where we set aside a fund if a property owner could demonstrate, some sort of hardship, that the city would share costs with them to repair their sidewalks. And we had an inspection program where we had cracking and heaving or root damage. We would put a tag out at that property that they need to repair it, and depending if, case by case basis, if say the cause of it was a street tree that was a poor choice on the city's part at some time, then we would pick up part of that cost.
Todd, have you seen the proposed sidewalk maintenance and repair plan that ATC submitted to City Council? That was drafted based upon another city. It seemed like a solid plan.
It is.
You might.
Yeah. It all comes down to, funding it. I think I've added some comments, to make sure that, there were some recommendations from the Active Transportation Committee that, we certainly appreciate, but they didn't really
quite have the, there's, folks on committee sometimes get, like a little too excited about what a city can fund and what they can't. And so I needed to temper some of that language so that the expectation was the city wasn't going to, take on all that cost. So it's a good plan, but we need to figure out a kind of a middle line based on a case-by-case basis where, the city could pick up part of that cost. But there are other, there are grants that will pay for sidewalk gaps. We can also, I've seen where we've had STIP applications go in different cities where we've had a package of specific locations that we know we're not going to be able to fix those gaps and add them and bundle them into one big project, and I've seen those funded.
Mm-hmm.
Do I hear it?
Not yet.
We haven't done public comment yet.
Anybody online, Catherine?
Yes, our first speaker will be Betty Krieger.
Hi. Oops, sorry.
Hi, Betty.
Hi, I really like this discussion about sidewalks. For a long time, as you know, I walked all over the city. I haven't been able to do that this year. But I've noticed a number of places where, whether it be homes or businesses or empty lots that are up for sale, where the sidewalk is either non-existent or in disrepair. One place on Pine that is a empty lot that's up for sale. There's lots of cracks and disturbances under the sidewalk, and frequently it's just covered with growth. There are places on Lake where it looks as if those houses have been there for a very long time, but have never had sidewalks in front of them. And so one of my questions is, at some point, if the city continues to ignore that, does the city become responsible for it? I think perhaps it would be a good idea for the city to come up with a way to, well, first address that. Is that an issue? And find a way to advise these owners of the property that if they don't proceed to fix the sidewalks as required by law, that there will be and you'll have to come up with a number, a fine. And that would be another way to get money into the city coffers, as well as get those sidewalks repaired. That's all I have, thanks.
Thank you, Betty. Catherine, anybody else? And nobody in the audience? Let's bring it back to council for questions, comments. Do I hear a motion?
Move to approve. Hold on a second, Mr. City accounts, City of Mount Shasta, City Council Resolution -22-31. I'm trying to look for good wording here. Approving the proposed resolution adopting a list of projects as mentioned in the body of the agenda item to be funded by Senate Bill 1, SB 1 for fiscal year 2022-23 by title only.
I'll second.
And just for purpose of discussion, I will be voting in favor of this, although I am concerned that there's no money for sidewalks or for complete streets. And I'd like to make sure that we address that going forward.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? There were no outside meetings, so we're on to future agenda items, and I'd kind of like to start this one myself. I feel like I should know more about the sidewalk laws that are or are not being enforced, because I've watched homes and properties in and around my area come and go and turn multiple times, and the sidewalks either are non-existent or don't get fixed. And I don't know what the laws are in place, so my request is, with the blessing of the rest of the council, that we have an agenda item on sidewalks here pretty soon, just, if nothing else, just to cover what is the mechanism and how do we get these things fixed?
Okay, so I'm going to second that and add on that agenda item. So in light of the fact that we're going to have a council workshop the following week after our next council meeting, and I was going to bring up sidewalks, but we have at least 3, possibly 4 people that are pretty fired up about this item. We need to start making some gains and improvement on sidewalks. It just isn't happening. I've been in the city since 2013, and prior to that, I lived in North Mount Shasta, and the sidewalks were terrible. Tim's been here a long time. Jeff, I'm not sure, and Tessa her whole life, I think. And the only time sidewalks get improved is when the city does those special tree removal deals, which are, those are working out pretty nice. I'd like to see more of those or get it completed. Or when something new is built. When something new is built, a nice sidewalk is put in. And that's just not happening enough. So not only going over the laws, which would be the first part of the discussion, but the second part would be options.
Next step options.
Yes, options to improve. Do we make, for instance, I'm just going to throw out some ideas. Do we make sidewalks part of drainage? And sidewalks and drainage are right next to each other, right? And we'll look at Prop 218 process that would include sidewalks. So you would expand on the current drainage effort. Do you set up a whole new enterprise fund zone? What do you call these? Enterprise fund for sidewalks in cooperation with property owners. So it'd be a special arrangement. Do we say, hey, property owners, we have to improve these things, these sidewalks, you're not moving, so here's a middling approach. We'll take a certain amount of money each month from you folks, and we're going to finance, underwrite all these improvements, start with the worst areas and move forward. We need some ideas on top of what the technical laws are for moving forward, because we have Alta coming up with strong suggestions regarding sidewalks. Apparently ATC, talking about ATC recently or in the past?
Probably 2.5 years ago.
Okay, so that one, right. So there are ideas for improving sidewalks, but it's time to actually do something substantial, put something into practice that's legally allowable and amenable to both parties. That would be the general citizenry and the property owners. It's going to cost somebody money. There's no question about that. I think we'll get some grants, but seriously, we're not going to get enough grants to take care of the whole problem.
Understand. One approach that I've seen cities take is giving a period of time for that property owner to make those repairs, whether it's 6 months or a year. And in certain cases, then the city goes in. If they haven't done the work, the city comes in, does the repair, and attaches that cost as a lien against their property. There are a lot of ways around it.
Todd, if I might follow up with what Councilmember Stackfluff was talking about. Perhaps you could take a look at that ATC proposed sidewalk maintenance and tweak it as you deem might be beneficial.
To the chair.
Yeah.
I have 2 flag football games that I am missing right now.
Yeah,
so
and we will cover this soon.
To cover this at the next agenda item, that would mean a lot to my kids.
And are there any other future agenda items?
I have one.
Okay. It's your fault.
I know. Okay. So 10B, short-term rental ordinance. This was created when Teresa initially, with the council's approval, halted the ordinance for short-term, and we were telling everyone that it'll soon come and we will get our short-term ordinance coming. Since now we are plannerless and we have some realtors and home buyers really antsy to see where council's direction is going to go, is there a way for us to give management direction and to do some homework and bring it back to us? I'm not sure how that works, but.
So may I carry on?
Yes, please.
So in other words, can we do the ordinance development process ourselves without the planning commission? Because that would be most expedient, because I don't think they're going to be formulated to do that.
So, yes.
Planning commission.
So here is part of the issue is, I want to be careful here. We have a short-term rental ordinance that was written before our last planner was on. It just needs to be enacted. I need another set of eyes on it from an experienced planner, which we are able to farm out some of that work to somebody above our, our current line level planner. It'll cost us a little more money, but if we get eyes on what we've already got written, which for some reason our most recent planner didn't want to touch, we can adopt what we have on the books now.
Okay, through the chair. Does her plan look anything like 570 in Dunsmere?
Yes.
Okay, thought so. I just read 570, by the way. So why not bring that to council? We have a meeting where I hope all of you read it in advance. It's actually not that long. And then amend that. Go to a first reading, public hearing, and second, hopefully get this finished by the end of November, possibly maybe that one meeting in December, because this moratorium is going to end in February, and it would be a bit embarrassing to have to extend it because we just can't get. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I like 570, except, okay, no, whatever, but I read it thoroughly. Were you there for that? The writing of 570 in Dunsmere?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm good.
You're good.
Okay, so this is mine, even though these two were mine, you stole those. So we're having this meeting on October 17th, and we need updates. I don't know if you want to call an agenda item or part of your comments at the beginning of the next city council meeting, but we need thoroughgoing updates on the water projects and the general water master plan. I would assume you'd have to talk to Pace. I'm under the impression we have quite a bit to do before that master plan is completed, at least 3 projects, but I would like confirmation of that. So when we have our meeting, we can kind of just say it's still being worked through by Pace. Likewise with the sanitary sewer system, obviously we have 2 major projects going, but we have this settlement project, for lack of a better phrase, where River Exchange, somebody sued us for not, River Watch, protectors of rivers, they sued us and we settled, paid a fee to them, and we have a company checking our sewers yearly. Would it behoove us to accelerate that and actually get all our pipes fixed sooner, because there may be grant monies through the infrastructure bill that are available now? If we wait 10 years from now, we may have to, it's that. I need updates on those 3. Yes.
Updates on 3 things.
Those 2 things, and then the whole drainage situation.
Thank you, John. And but she's got to go. And,
Well, no,
and
I mean,
no, hey, it's okay. Hey, and on that note, we're adjourned.
thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.
Okay. Oh.